Back on Play It Forward, Jonathan Salemi, director, filmmaker, director of A Truth in Silence. Jonathan, thanks for being on the show. Do you write as well?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
So out of necessity.
Okay, cool. Well, can you intro yourself and your background and the film if you'd like prior to starting, please?
Yeah. So first off, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Okay,
My
thank you.
name is Jonathan Salemi. I'm a director based out of Los Angeles. I started when I moved out to LA from Boston, had an internship at Sony Pictures, made my first feature, Ante Up, during that time period, then made a slew of short films. So I think I dove into filmmaking head first when I started with a feature.
Yeah.
So I kind of had to engineer backwards after that, made some shorts, and recently have a feature on Stars that played in theaters earlier this year. And the movie you're asking about is A Truth in Silence. I only directed that. That was produced and written by Felipe Pena, based on a weekend in his life. Completely true story. And it tells a tale of domestic violence within a household and looking for hope.
Yeah. It is a tough film to watch. There's a statistic in the back of it, or at the end of it, it's like 2 million annually women face domestic abuse, violence, and it's only reported 20% of the time, right?
Yeah, I can't remember the exact stat, but I think it might be or is probably more than that in regards to the volume that actually experience domestic violence and the ones that don't report it. It's astounding. I never knew that stat until I made the film.
Yeah, I'll get the right stat. We'll post the right stat with this
Okay.
interview. And whatever the number is, one is too many.
Exactly.
So, I mean, it's just astronomical. If it's 2 million, 22 million, it's hard to, conceptualize that, degree of suffering. And the
Hmm.
film definitely, paints it very graphically. First question to play it forward is where in your life experience did you resonate with this script and say, okay, yeah, I want to take this on?
Um, so there wasn't any part of the film that was true to my life. I was very fortunate in that circumstance. But for me as a filmmaker and knowing Felipe, like it was a story that I wanted to tell, and it was his story. So I wanted to get the opportunity to make his story, or to tell his story. And so my whole motivation was just to do that justice. Meanwhile, um, trying filmmaking ways that I haven't done before and experiencing emotions that I've never put on film before. So it was a great experience for me as a growing experience as a filmmaker and just as a human. When he was telling me his story and the stat that you mentioned, I was like, okay, this is something that needs to be told.
Yeah.
So so yeah, being from a household of a lot of women, like my mother and two sisters, and um, it was something that resonated with me in that regard. That I would never want to see anything like that happen to them.
Yeah, of course. And that's what I heard in your answer, even when you started with wanting to tell um his story, Felipe's
Correct. Yeah.
Felipe's story, because really that's where it starts with compassion and sympathy, the compassion for that, exposing that kind of suffering so you can create awareness, through the film. So I can, definitely understand that being a motivating factor in terms of the film and in terms of like diving in and analyzing the narrative arc. I like to ask filmmakers, hey, what's the meaning? What's the message of the movie to you? You don't have to tell me what audiences should, see, but what is it to you?
To me, it was about a mother's love of her child and perseverance of wanting to find hope on the other side. And you know, I'd never met Felipe's brothers. I think I talked to one on the phone, but in knowing Felipe, who's an outstanding human in person. She raised him amazingly, and he's a great guy. And so it does show that there is hope. And for me, it was telling a story that didn't that painted a picture that there is hope, and anyone that was going through that kind of circumstance, that they could see that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And that's what I took from it.
Mm, thanks. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. It's interesting that you say that because the movie ends with her still in bed with the perpetrator.
Mhm.
She's not out of it. She fought a good fight,
Right.
but she didn't leave. So I guess from a narrative perspective, it's kind of, well, where's the hope that she did put up a fight and maybe she'll
Mhm.
fight again and leave?
Right.
And then there's um, for lack of a better word, recidivism on the part of the victim to, keep silent. And, the title of the film, A Truth in Silence, you know, is is what's the truth? The truth is this is going on all the time. And sadly, it's it's happening at such an excessive rate. And how do we as a society um, do something about it?
Mhm. Yeah, it's very heavy, the ending, if you look at it in regards to it's hard to break any cycle,
Yeah,
and especially one that his mother was experiencing. Like, to just get up and run away one day may not be the reality for many people.
yeah,
And so yeah, she does wake up the next day with him. But one of the things that we did at the end of the movie, which I don't know if it read enough, but um, his mother in the movie, played by Vanessa, she would tie her hairband anytime the
yes.
father came home, to show like her being proper and studious
Having it
and
together. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And at the end, I believe the hairband breaks and she
Snaps.
chooses not to put it on. And so that, for Felipe and myself, like when we were going over it, was a way to instill hope that that cycle is breaking.
Yeah.
That although she's waking up with him, and you can't exactly just change overnight, that may not be reality for many people, that it is coming and it is going to happen.
Yeah.
So, and that's why I think it's heavy, because it's you can talk from many different types of abuse, whether it be physical abuse or abuse in oneself. Breaking that is a bit of two steps forward, one step back.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's great. I think it's a great awareness to shed on the subjects like that because, like you said, when you broaden the lens up to abuse in general, whether that's self-inflicted or inflicted by others, breaking the cycle is the challenge. And, I think one thing that makes it harder is when a person gets down on themselves and starts, losing hope, making themselves feel worthless because they can't break the cycle. And
Right.
so, creating that compassion around it that says, hey, it's okay. It does take time. There
Correct.
is, a process to it. And, you know, you're human. You can't just shift from, black to white in that, millisecond.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
just very human. Like, whether you're an alcoholic or a gambler or whatever is happening, it's not going to solve itself overnight. The reality is there will be two steps forward, one step back, and not to repeat that, but like I think if you can make progress, any type of progress,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
that's the way to break a cycle.
Yeah. And the aggressor in this is also in a cycle of abuse and abusing himself. And
Yeah,
he's living in a very violent, tormented place as much as he's violent and tormenting others.
correct. Yeah, so there's a cycle going on for him too, and can
Yeah.
he break that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you have any insights about breaking cycles that you can share with us?
just personal growth. I know any type of personal growth or anything, like just for myself that I see. I need to improve on, or um, I'm suffering from insanity of doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, is usually like, I think it helps to write it down, what it is that you're doing, what it is that you want to achieve, and really just trying to make progress. Like any step forward is a good step forward, and it takes time for the brain to acclimate into a new state of being. And for alcoholics, to talk about 90 days. You pass the 90 days,
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
brain reprograms, so to speak, of this new way of life. And so any type of cyclical thing that you're doing, I I truly believe that it takes, like, in 30 days you see a change, but in 90 days the world sees a change.
Hmm.
So you really have to just keep trying to make any step forward.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that,
Yeah,
and I really appreciate how it starts with writing it down. I think that's a really valuable thing is, that's kind of like in the beginning there was the word, and you make it concrete, concretize it.
correct. Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
You make it real by, okay, it's not just kind of a passing thought. This is something I'm ready to commit to.
Correct. Because you're basically, what you're doing, and as a I don't know if you would classify him as a doctor. I mean, he calls himself a doctor. Uh, Dr. Joe Dispenza. If the audience wants to look him up, he talks about, what we're in right now is the comfortable. If you're repeating something over and over again, it's comfortable. That's what you recognize. And you will always go back to your baseline. That's your comfort. That's where you know, that's where you live, that's where you survive. But on the other side, if there's something you want to change, that's the uncomfortable. And it's very important to step into the uncomfortable. And the more you step into the uncomfortable, the more that becomes a habit. And then a habit over time becomes a behavior. And then that shapes your behavior and becomes the new you. And it takes work. You can always, even if you're a year or 2 or 5 years out of whatever you came out of, you know, it's like sugar. You can easily go back.
That's the truth. I really appreciate that. I think that's really resonant for everybody to hear as humans. Jonathan, last question I'll play it forward is,
Yeah.
how has your life changed since making a Truth in Silence?
Um, so I can speak for a career perspective. Like, A Truth in Silence was probably the first film I made that was the most close to a union project at the time. So having every department represented, and just me being able to step on set and have all the tools and the people around me to make the vision happen. That for me, because I come from the indie film world, and even the feature I have right now was an indie film, but that opened my eyes to um, a different way of filmmaking, or the correct way of film. There is no right or wrong way of filmmaking, but a way that I could concentrate all my skills on the visual and then the talent. And that's something that I carry forward, no matter how big or small the crew size is to always treat it the same way. And I did that even before in my career when I made that first feature, treating it like a union project and treating the crew with the respect and proper breaks and all that stuff. I've always done that, um, and that film, career-wise, helped me out, seeing like, hey, this is really cool. This is, a very large film, but on a short film.
Got it. And can you speak to the personal side of the change, you know?
Personal side, it gave me a deeper way to tell my message in movies. Um, that that I can, if I can infuse a human aspect in there, that people can see themselves, or whether one person or a million sees themselves in that, it makes it worthwhile for me. And even if they don't see themselves, the fact that they can see some truth and what's on screen definitely resonates with the audience and with myself, and telling the story and being passionate about the story.
Mm, that's awesome. It sounds like that may come from, or I should ask you the question, but does it come from creating moments like, snapping the rubber band, these little moments that have
Yes.
meaning to the
That's
character?
so important.
Yeah.
There's like, because before Truth and Silence, I made a short called Chasing the Past, and that was a little bit more commercial and personal. And then in Truth and Silence, it was like more about moments, and I got to play with stunts for the first time, and Terrence Malick at the time was a huge influence on me, and I was able to create a moment when she's dancing with the baby, and we ramped down the film so you had slow motion on that as she's dancing with the child and the lights reflecting behind her, and it was just an incredibly beautiful shot. And yeah, it's about creating moments. That's a very important lesson.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Jonathan Salemi, filmmaker, director, writer. Thank you for being on Play It Forward. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
You got it. Everybody, we're out. Play It Forward. Later, Jonathan.
So yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thanks for that wave, Jonathan. All right, don't go anywhere.